So next, a lot of people are like, okay, do I have damage or not? But like, what are important things that a homeowner needs to know before they file a claim? Because I think like, it's like, do I have damage or not? Yes, file a claim. I don't think that's all of it personally. Garrett, what do you think? Like, what are other things that they need to know before they file a claim?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different points that you need to be aware of before filing a claim. And one of those would just be how long do you have, right? What's that time period? We talked about that year to 2 year time period from the date of the storm that you had to file a claim. You need to know that. So Absolutely. On top of that, you need to know the date that the storm occurred.
Yeah. And what's common ways to find out storm dates? Like if you weren't home or it was at night and you just don't know, how do you figure out a storm date?
Well, there's weather reports. You can go to, National Weather Service, and there's also platforms you can use to get address specified storm reports, and you can talk to your neighbors too. If they were home and the storm occurred and you weren't, you can talk to your neighbors. There's several ways that you can find out what the actual effect in the storm result was at your property.
Absolutely. What other things do they need to know about?
When it comes to your policy, this is why you need to understand what your policy covers, but the deductible amount. If you're considering filing a claim, you need to know, well, what is it? What am I going to end up having to pay out of pocket?
Yeah. Because years ago when I first got into this business, deductibles were $250, $500. Yeah. And it was very common for contractors to eat the deductible, right? Which basically means they didn't make the homeowner pay for the deductible. Well, now they've raised, one of the strategies of insurance companies was they raised the deductible amount so contractors can't just eat the deductible or they're working for free, right?
Yeah.
And so the other thing on the other side of deductibles, because a lot of people, if you've had a roof replaced through insurance before, maybe a contractor has done that, it's not common to see that. And I think the thing you got to be careful with when you encounter a contractor that may be willing to eat your deductible, because that's insurance fraud, first off, right? Felony insurance fraud, right? Yeah. If that contractor is willing to go behind your insurance company's back to defraud them, what are they willing to do on your roof when you're not looking?
Right.
What corners are they going to cut? Because they got to find a way to make a profit. If they're eating the deductible, where are they going to make their money?
They're going to make that up somewhere.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Whether it's like inferior products, not replacing everything that's supposed to be replaced. So, as a homeowner, you be prepared to pay your deductible. And that's why I think it is important to know, what is your deductible? And it's not just important to know when it's time to file a claim.
Yeah.
Again, get ahead of that game, get with your insurance agent and know your deductible and be comfortable with the deductible that you have to make sure that if a storm happens and you need to file a claim, you're prepared to be able to pay that deductible.
100%. It's also, that's why it's important to have a detailed estimate as well. Find a contractor that's willing to walk through that estimate with you. That way there is no hidden corners.
Yeah.
If, the contractor comes and is willing to eat the deductible and you get the estimate and it's just a paragraph stating we're replacing your roof with a total amount, you can almost be sure there's going to be some corners cut.
Yeah.
But if everything's laid out in the estimate and you can tell what they're doing specifically, and it can give you a little bit more of a leeway and comfort going into that.
Absolutely. Other things that may be important to know in your insurance policy, code upgrades, right? Is code covered? Most policies do. I think it should be outlawed to not sell a policy 100%. With code coverage. But some of these policies we see today where the homeowner just went a really, really low premium. Now they've got an ACV policy, which is only actual cash replacement, really high deductible, no code coverage. And it just puts them in a terrible spot.
Yeah. Nobody ends up happy in that position.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's important to know we mentioned ACV versus RCV, right? And I think it's good to kind of explain what that means. Do you have an ACV policy and RCV policy? An ACV policy stands for an actual cash value policy.
Yep.
This means that you're going to get paid based off of the value of the roof. And that is based off of age and condition of the roof.
Yep.
So based off the age of the roof, so let's say you have a shingle that is rated for 30 years and it's been on there for 20 years, they're going to deduct 20 years of life off of it. So if they were going to pay you $10,000, now they're going to pay you $3,333.
Yep.
And they're going to depreciate the roof, is what they call as depreciation. Where an RCV policy is a replacement cost value policy. This is maybe considered like a full replacement policy, as like people like to think of. And what that means is if the roof is 20 years old, 30-year rated shingle, they will initially write you a check for ACV, which would be the actual cash value. Here is a check for $3,333. This is what your roof is worth today.
Yep.
When you get the work done and the contractor submits an invoice and possibly pictures showing completion, we will release the other $667 that fulfills that $10,000 gap, and they cover full replacement. It is really risky to have an ACV policy, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, solely my opinion, but if it was up to having an ACV policy or no insurance at all, I would probably pick the no insurance.
Which your mortgage company probably won't allow.
Yeah, that's true. You definitely check with the mortgage company, but from an experience point of view, from that perspective of a contractor such as myself or you, Corey, that has experience, they know what the claim process looks like. They know the difference between RCV and ACV. ACV just doesn't make sense.
100%. 100%.
It doesn't make sense to have it.
Yeah, it's, is it riskier to only get paid $3,000 on a $10,000 roof, or is it more risky to make sure that you're going to get it all the way replaced and everything's covered other than your deductible?
Inflation's inevitable as well.
Yeah.
So over time, that cost to replace your roof is going to continue to increase, and that RCV covers that.
Yeah,
which is nice.
And that's why, we get a lot of calls in the office, and homeowners will call us and say, I think I have damage. My other neighbors are getting roofs, but I need to know if I should file a claim.
Yep.
And so we get a lot of those calls because homeowners don't want to file a claim and then have a claim on their record if they don't actually have damage. And they want to make sure that if they do file a claim, they have a contractor to back them up all the way and say, yeah, we're willing to go to fight for you. We're going to do our best to make sure this actually gets approved by doing inspections and having inspection reports, complete estimates, and having the experience of being in business for over 10 years and, having great reviews. People know they can trust us. Okay. And I think that's the biggest thing when you go into these is, should I file a claim? You want to make sure whoever's advising you as a contractor is somebody you can trust to make sure it's going to go well for you.
Yep.